Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom. How we doing out there? I hope that everybody's having a blessed Shabbat. I hope we taking care of ourselves, boosting our immune system as we is in this fight on a daily basis against this COVID madness. Hope we keeping the Most High first, most of all. Today I'm gonna go ahead and get into this children's lesson. We're gonna do the 10 Commandments, followed by the introduction to the books of the Bible. Then we're gonna go into today's topic, which we're still dealing with, the Split Kingdom series. We're gonna talk about Rehoboam's fate. Okay, that's first the 10 Commandments. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall have no other gods before me. Some of those other gods, when we talk about other gods, that's anything, and I mean anything, that consists of you putting your effort and your time into more than the Father can become your God. So you shall have no other gods before me, right? You shall not make for yourself an idol. All right. Now, of course, as a matter of fact, I'm going to read that out of the Hallelujah in Shemot, or Exodus 20 and verse 4. It says, "You do not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of that which is in the Shamayim, which is heaven above, or which is in the earth beneath, or which is in the waters under the earth. You do not bow down to them nor serve them, for I, Yahuwah your Elohim, am a jealous El, visiting the wickedness of the fathers on the children to the third and fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing kindness to thousands to those who love me and guard my commands." Right? So I wanted to read that out of the Hallelujahs because it says much more than "you shall not make for yourself an idol." All right? It says much more. So you shall not make for yourself an idol, neither shall you bow down to them, nor serve them. Right? And it says, "You do not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of that which is in the heavens above, or which is in the earth beneath, or which is in the waters under the earth." So what you have to understand is we can't make a fish out of wood or any other material and bow down to it or worship it. That would be something representative of the seas beneath the earth, right? So we can't take any animal or anything and bow down to it. All right, so that's why I read that. All right, so you shall not make for yourself an idol. You shall not misuse the name of Yahuwah your Elohim. Now, how can we misname the Most High? How can we misuse the Most High's name? Well, you can take a vow in His name and then not uphold your vow. That's one way. You can swear in His name when you know how sometimes people they'll swear to the Most High that something is true, but then it ends up not being true. That is a misusage of His name. All right, so it's best not to do those things, and then, like our Lord said, it's best not to make a vow at all or swear in His name at all. Let your yea be yea and your nay be nay. All right, and if you notice, the Most High, when He says something, it's good as somebody swearing in His name. He don't have to swear. His word is true, right? So you should not misuse the name of Yahuwah your Elohim. You can misuse His name by swearing in His name falsely. All right? Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. All right? So I'm going to read that out of here because, again, this is just a chart. And we go, just to touch on the 10 Commandments. But the commandments is much deeper. So I'm going to read that out of Exodus. So Exodus chapter 20 and verse 8. "Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and shall do all your work. But the seventh day is a Shabbat of Yahuwah your Elohim. You do not do any work. you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger who is within your gates. For in 6 days Yahuwah made the Shamayim and the earth and the sea and all that is in them, and rested the seventh day. Therefore Yahuwah blessed the seventh day, and he baraked the Shabbat day and Kodesh it, and he made it holy. Okay, so how can we keep the seventh day? How can we keep the Sabbath day holy? Well, one of the things is we can study our word. We can come and congregate on the Sabbath. Prayer. You can also get some rest. All right. We want to keep ourselves from doing anything that's of the world to our best ability. Keep ourselves from doing anything that's of the world. All right. So, we don't want to we definitely want to do our best. If we are, I know, you all are children. Of course, we talk about this during the main lesson as well. In regards to the Sabbath, adults is not supposed to work on the Sabbath, but of course, some people is just waking up and starting to come into this walk. And so you may see, this is why you see some people still having to work on the Sabbath. But ultimately, we want to get to where we don't work on the Sabbath, okay? And that's how you keep the Sabbath holy, right? Honor your father and your mother so that you may live long in the land Yahuwah your Elohim is giving you. Honor your father and mother. So how can we honor our father and mother? All right. Number one, we want to obey their instructions by all means. All right. The Most High has given them as our parents. We are to obey them. We are not equal to our mother and father. Another way to obey our mother and father is by keeping them with a good name. Example, shalom. For example, if you have a falling out with your parents, that doesn't give you the right to go out and talk bad about them and say bad things about your parents, okay? Keep them with a good name. So that's one way you can honor your father and mother. Of course, you can give your parents gifts, all right? These are just some of the ways you can honor your parents, okay? You shall not murder. You shall not murder. All right, what is murder? According to the Bible, murder is when a man, say if a man and another man have altercation or they have a problem and they have a falling out, one man go home and he really disagree. He really doesn't like what this man has said to him. So he decides to get his weapon and he go back and do some bodily harm to that man, right? That would be considered murder. Or if you have a robber that comes up and he tries to rob you and he kills you in the process of doing that, that is murder, right? Versus if a robber comes up on you and he try to rob you and you defend yourself. Or if a man comes to try to do you bodily harm and you defend yourself and you fight back and you end up killing him. Yeah, somebody died, but that's not murder. Murder is when somebody has evil intentions of doing something bad to you, and they go ahead and do something bad to you, right? So that's murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not commit adultery. All right, so adultery for a woman would be her leaving her husband to go and to be with another man, right? That's adultery for a woman. Adultery for a man is him divorcing his wife and then marrying another woman without his first wife actually committing fornication or adultery. Because the only reason a man could divorce his wife is because she committed adultery or fornication. That's the only way that a man would be able to divorce his wife, according to our Lord Yeshua HaMashiach, right? You shall not steal. You shall not steal. Now here, what you have is you have a woman that is in a store. We don't really know if she's wealthy or if she's poor, But we just know that in this picture that she's watching out to see if the clerk is watching while she's taking some candy, right? So let's pretend she's poor. It is not okay for a poor person to go and steal at all. Just because you're poor, that doesn't give you the right to go and steal. Right? You still should ask. Okay? You still should ask. It is not right for somebody that's poor to go and steal. All right? And there's no exception to this rule. Thou shalt not steal. You should not give false testimony against your neighbor. You should not give false testimony against your neighbor. Right? So in the situation here, giving false testimony against your neighbor, you have two boys and you have the owner of the house. This boy is blaming his friend on about the window. This window was broken, so he's saying that he blaming his friend, saying that he broke this window, and the owner of the house is trying to decide who's telling the truth, right? In the situation here, the word neighbor is referencing family, right? The word neighbor is in reference to family. When you read neighbor, it's referencing different family relations, whether you or friendships, depending on how close you are. So when we're talking about family, we're talking about brother or sister, mother, son, father, or son and daughter, or father and daughter, right? Regardless of the relation, that is our neighbor. Here, the word neighbor is in reference to your next door neighbor. All right. Now, even though they could be next door neighbors, in the Bible, that is not what it's talking about. Okay. So the word neighbor is in reference to family. Okay. So, and you got him lying, saying that he has broken his window, and when in all reality, it was him. And you got the owner of the house trying to decide. In ancient Israel, what usually happened was when you had somebody that got caught bearing false witness, what they sought to do to another person, they would receive that punishment. So if somebody said, well, if somebody falsely accused one man, if he was to falsely accuse him of breaking this window, and he said, and then he get caught lying, whatever punishment was supposed to go to him, whether he was supposed to pay some money to get the window fixed, or whether he would get beaten, this crime, that punishment will go to him because he got caught lying, whether he did the crime or not. Right? So that's how serious it was to not be bearing false witness and breaking Yah's laws. All right, last but not least, you shall not covet anything that belongs to your neighbor. You shall not covet anything that belongs to your neighbor. Okay? So, and what does the word covet mean? Covet means lust. Right? And then neighbor, of course, we just established that it's talking about it's talking about a family relationship of some type. So we'll pretend that this woman is looking at her brother or her sister's possession. So now they came out of the same mother and father. So if they came from the same parents, why would she lust after her sister's possession? So there's something in her heart that's evil, and what it leads to is breaking other laws. So if she's lusting after, if she doesn't check this lust, what happens is it leads her to go and steal. But in the midst of her stealing, she might have to kill to get these possessions, this nice house and this nice car, right? So, we have to check ourselves. That covet is something that's in our hearts. Covetousness is in our hearts, and we have to check that. And if we don't, it leads us to commit other sins. Okay? All right, so that's the 10 Commandments. Now we're going to go into the books of the Bible. right? So we got the books of the Bible here, and we got the law, we got the history. These are the different sections of the Bible, of the 66 books of the Bible that we use, right? We got the law, history, poetry, major prophets. We got the minor prophets. We got the Gospels. We got history in the New Testament. This is New Testament history, which is the book of Acts. That's the only New Testament history. We got the epistles to the churches, and you have the epistles to friends. The word epistle just means letter. Okay, you got the epistles. Make sure y'all can see me. Got the epistles to friends, and you have epistles to churches, and you have the general epistles. Again, the word epistle just means letter. Okay, all right. So then we're gonna go through the books. You got in the law. Remember, we talked about this section. In the law, you have Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. So that's the law. That's the Hebrew word is Torah. Law. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Then you have in the history, you have the history section of the Bible. You have Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1 Samuel and 2 Samuel, 1 Kings and 2 Kings, 1 Chronicles and 2 Chronicles, Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther, right? So that's your historical books, and they go from when Joshua first led the children of Israel into the land of Israel or into the land of Canaan, to all the way until the children of Israel came out of Babylonian captivity, while some still remained in the lands where they was taken into captivity, but they wasn't necessarily slaves. So somebody like Esther was not a slave at this time. She married the king of Persia and became the queen. All right, and she helped deliver her people from the hand of Haman, who was at one point a second in command over Persia, and he was making an effort to kill the Jews. So Esther was a queen, but she was an Israelite though, and her family had been taken into captivity. But once the captivity was taken away, many people stayed in the lands where they was taken, and that's what happened with Esther and Mordecai, her uncle. Okay, you have Nehemiah, who was living in Persia. He was responsible for coming back to Israel and building the wall around Israel, all right, to fortify the land and fortify to help to fortify the temple. Ezra was a priest and prophet, and he was responsible for bringing the law back to Israel, and reestablishing the law and reestablishing the order in Israel that was supposed to be there according to the first ways that was there before they went into captivity. All right, so that time period from Joshua to Esther is a couple hundred years that is focusing on those books. Very important, very important. Job, Psalm. Now we got the poetry books, right? Or the writings. You have Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Solomon. All right, these are considered the writings. Job was not an Israelite, but Job was a righteous man, and he is a man that existed before Israel became a nation. Job was very important. And this is one of the most important books of the Bible because of his trial and what he went through. Job had gotten very sick. He was tried by the Most High. He got very sick. He lost his family. He lost his wealth, and his friends was afflicting him with words by falsely accusing him of being unrighteous because they couldn't understand how Job was going through the trial that he was going through. but he was innocent the whole time. It's just that his friends was afflicting him with their words and falsely accusing him. And ultimately it led to the Most High intervening and letting them know that, you have, pretty much they misrepresented the Most High, and them saying that he had sinned, because Job did not sin. And Job had to offer up a sacrifice for his friends, even though they spoke against him. And they had to offer up a sacrifice. Job had to offer up a sacrifice so that so that the Most High wouldn't kill his friends, because the Most High was very angry with him, right? And you have Psalms, most of these books are credited to King David. So most people say that King David wrote most of the Psalms, right? Proverbs, Solomon wrote most of the Proverbs. Ecclesiastes is credited to Solomon, King Solomon as well. And of course you got Song of Solomon, right? Then you got the prophets. Major prophets are Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, which is written by Jeremiah. All right, so you got Jeremiah and Lamentations. Both of those are written by Jeremiah. You got Ezekiel and you have Daniel. All right, those are your major prophets. You got the minor prophets, right? There's the minor prophets. You have Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, and you have Malachi. All right, Malachi, out of the minor prophets, is the last book of the minor prophets, right? And he's prophesying in the book of Malachi, is prophesying John the Baptist, his future coming, along with Yeshua HaMashiach's future coming, right? Just to give you a little insight on what the book is about, right? You got the Gospels. You have Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, all telling about the events of our Lord Yeshua HaMashiach, right? The book of the Acts, all right, talks about the apostles, who was the disciples to Yeshua HaMashiach. This book of the Acts is mainly about Paul and how he converted and the works that he did, but it talks about all of the apostles as well, but mainly about Paul and how he converted, how he spread the gospel to Gentile nations who were not believers in the Most High. And through his works and through the Most High using him, these people were converted. Then you have the epistles to churches. All of these were written by Paul. The epistles to churches, which is letters. The word epistle just means letters. All of these were written by Paul. Romans, you have Romans, you have 1st and 2nd Corinthians, you have Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, all written by Paul, right? 1 Timothy, 2 Timothy, Titus, and Philemon, written by Paul. You have, these are to his friends. These are people that's over the church, deacons or bishops. They are over the churches, right? They're over the churches that the apostles helped to establish. And then you have regular epistles, Hebrews, James, which is an apostle. You have 1st and 2nd Peter. Peter is an apostle. The church was built on him. And you have 1st John, 2nd John, and 3rd John. He's an apostle. You have Jude, that was an apostle. And then you got Revelation, who was written by John, the apostle. All right. Those are your books of the Bible. All right, let's go into today's topic. So we are still talking about the Split Kingdom series. We are still talking about Rehoboam. All right, he's a Southern Kingdom prophet, and we're going to finish out talking about him for today. All right, and let's see what happened to Rehoboam, which is Solomon's son. Remember, Solomon started to sin. It led to him receiving a prophecy that the kingdom will be split. The kingdom was one under him, but then the kingdom was split because of his sin. His sin was him dealing with multiple wives and worshiping their gods. So when he started to do that, the Most High sent a prophet. The Most High appeared to him and told him that this would be his punishment, but it wouldn't happen under him. It would happen under his son, which is Rehoboam, right? Rehoboam. So we're going to finish out Rehoboam, and we're going to talk about the fate of Rehoboam, what happened to him, right? 1 second. Give me 1 second. So we're going to open up with 2 Chronicles 11, verse 5. And we're going to read down to 17. But let me remind you of the backstory of what happened. So Rehoboam became the king after King Solomon had passed away, which is his father. He had an opportunity to make the kingdom as one. He decided not to. By listening to foolish counsel. He had some elders that was counselors during his father's time. They gave him wise counsel. He said to them that they said to him that he should lighten up the tribute to them, and he did, and they didn't. What happened was he listened to the counsel of the youth, his younger his friends that he came up with. And they gave him counsel saying basically that he should make their tribute and their servitude much more harsh. So, and that was foolish counsel. He had an opportunity to unify the kingdom, right? So what ended up happening, the kingdom split. Jeroboam was already told that he would rule over the 10 tribes of Israel. All right. Jeroboam ultimately, because of his sin, he caused the northern kingdom to get killed. Because of his sin, he ended up dying, and his whole family was killed. And there was no more remnant of Jeroboam. The sons he had was killed. Okay, that's Jeroboam. I'm sorry. Rehoboam ended up living righteous for a time, as we're gonna see, and he ended up falling away from the Most High as well. Okay. So let's read about that. 2 Chronicles 11 and verse 5. This is 2 Chronicles 11, verse 5. And Rehoboam dwelt in Jerusalem and built cities for defense in Judah. He built even Bethlehem and Etah and Tekoa and Beth-Zur and Shekoah and Adullam and Gath and Marashah and Ziph and Adoram and Lachish and Azekah and Zorah and Ajalem and Hebron, which are in Judah and in Benjamin, fenced cities. So Rehoboam started to build up Jerusalem, the southern kingdom, right? Verse 11, and he fortified the strongholds and put captains in them and store of victual and of oil and wine. So he fortified, meaning he made them very strong. All right, so that the enemy couldn't come amongst them. He put people that he trusts in there, so that they can defend and fight for these cities, right? Verse 12, and in every several city he put shields and spears and made them exceeding strong, and having Judah and Benjamin on his side. And the priests and the Levites that were in all Israel, so in all Israel, meaning they was in the northern parts of Israel. Remember, at this time, the kingdom is split. So when it mentions Israel at this point, it's talking about the northern kingdom, right? Verse 13, and the priests and the Levites that were in all Israel resorted to him out of all their coasts. For the Levites left their suburbs and their possession and came to Judah and Jerusalem. For Jeroboam and his sons had cast them off from executing the priest's office unto Yahuwah. So Jeroboam, the king of the north, stopped allowing the Levites, who was ordained by the Most High to become priests. He cast them off, meaning he stopped them from being the priests in northern Israel. And so what they did was they moved to the southern kingdom, which is Judah, and lived under Jeroboam and made his kingdom stronger. I'm going to read verse 14. As a matter of fact, I'll start at 13 again. And the priests and the Levites that were in all Israel resorted to him out of all their coasts. For the Levites left their suburbs and their possession and came to Judah and Jerusalem. For Jeroboam and his sons had cast them off from executing the priest's office unto Yahuwah. And he ordained him priests for the high places and for the devils and for the calves which he had made. This is Jeroboam is talking about. So Jeroboam made priests, his own priests. He didn't want the priests of the Most High. He made his own priests for his high places that he created, right? So this is why the Levites moved under Rehoboam, because Jeroboam he made his own priests, because these righteous priests would not do as he said do. So he moved them out of that seat of authority. He didn't allow them to execute or be the ministers of the Most High anymore. Verse 15, and he ordained him priests for the high places and for the devils and for the calves which he had made. And after them, out of all the tribes of Israel, such as set their hearts to seek Yahuwah, Elohim of Israel, came to Jerusalem to sacrifice unto Yahuwah, Elohim of their fathers. Right? So other tribes besides the Levites, many people out of the different tribes, which is 12 of Israel, they decided to move to the kingdom of Judah, right? So when they moved to the kingdom of Judah and lived under Rehoboam, it was because they wanted to still serve the Most High, Yahuwah, and they still wanted to keep his laws, and they still wanted to show that they was obedient to him and him only. All right, they didn't want to serve the two golden calves that Jeroboam had made, right? Verse 17, so they strengthened the kingdom of Judah. So all these people, the Levites and the 12 tribes that still wanted to serve the Most High, they strengthened the kingdom of Judah and made Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, strong for 3 years. Hey, y'all gonna have to hold it down. Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, strong 3 years. For 3 years they walked in the way of David and Solomon. So for 3 years, Rehoboam showed righteousness. And for 3 years, his kingdom was established in righteousness because of what had happened. All right, so let's see what happens afterward. We're going to go to 2 Chronicles 12 and verse 1. Hold on. Second Chronicles 12 and verse 1. And it came to pass, when Rehoboam had established the kingdom and had strengthened himself, he forsook the law of Yahuwah and all Israel with him. All right, so it came to pass. Look at that. When Rehoboam had established the kingdom, once the kingdom is established, remember, it was said that they remained righteous for 3 years, and they walked in all the ways of David and Solomon, their fathers. Right. So when it was established after these 3 years, it was when they started to go off. And it came to pass when Rehoboam had established the kingdom and had strengthened himself, he forsook the law of Yahuwah and all Israel with him. And it came to pass that in the 5th year of King Rehoboam, Shishak, king of Egypt, came up against Jerusalem because they had transgressed against Yahuwah. So what happens is, since in the 5th year, Rehoboam became unrighteous, and he caused the children of Israel to move in unrighteousness. In the 5th year of his reign, the king of Egypt, the Most High took his protection from him and allowed the king of Egypt to come amongst them and war against them. Right? Verse 2, and it came to pass that in the 5th year of King Rehoboam, Shishak, king of Egypt, came up against Jerusalem because they had transgressed against Yahuwah, with 1,200 chariots and 70,000 horsemen. And the people were without number that came with him out of Egypt, the Lubims and the Sukims and the Ethiopians. These was all a part of the king of Egypt's army, right? Verse 4, and he took the fenced cities which pertain to Judah and came to Jerusalem. He took fenced cities. All right, remember, we just had saw how Rehoboam strengthened the kingdom of Judah by building fenced cities. So now that he's operating in unrighteousness, the fences and the protection hedge that he built, it doesn't matter because the Most High is not protecting it. And so when the king of Egypt come amongst them, the Most High is allowing this to happen because of Rehoboam and the rest of Israel's, or the rest of the southern kingdom of Judah's unrighteousness, right? Verse 5, then came Shemaiah the prophet to Rehoboam and to the princes of Judah that were gathered together to Jerusalem because of Shishak, and said unto them, thus saith Yahuwah, ye have forsaken me, and therefore have I also left you in the hand of Shishak. Whereupon the princes of Israel and the king humbled themselves, and they said, Yahuwah is righteous. So Rehoboam, after receiving this warning from Shemaiah the prophet, decided to humble himself, right? He understand that he sinned, and that the Most High, what he's doing is a righteous thing, because he understand that he's owning up to he's holding himself accountable that he sinned, right? And when Yahuwah saw, verse 7, and when Yahuwah saw that they humbled themselves, the word of Yahuwah came to Shemaiah, saying, they have humbled themselves, therefore I will not destroy them, but I will grant them some deliverance, and my wrath shall not be poured out upon Jerusalem by the hand of Shishak. Nevertheless, they shall be his servants, that they may know my service and the service of the kingdoms of the countries. So they shall be his servants. So Yahuwah caused the southern kingdom of Judah under Rehoboam to be the servants to Egypt. This same country that he delivered the children of Israel out of, they now have to serve Shishak, or the king of Egypt, because of their sin. Verse 9. So Shishak, king of Egypt, and it's also about verse 8. It says, nevertheless, they shall be his servants, that they may know my service and the service of the kingdoms of the countries. So the Most High wanted to show his glory through this, because he's making them understand that he's ultimately the authority in this situation, that they shouldn't be serving anybody. And so he have to also keep his word. He told them that if you sin, if you start to worship other gods, that is certain curses that will come about you. And some of those curses were them serving other kings, them being in servitude to a degree, right? Verse 9, so Shishak, king of Egypt, came up against Jerusalem and took away the treasures of the house of Yahuwah and the treasures of the king's house he took away. He carried away also the shields of gold which Solomon had made, instead of which King Rehoboam made shields of brass. So King Rehoboam made brass shields, and committed them to the hands of the chief of the guard that kept the entrance of the king's house. And when the king entered into the house of Yahuwah, the guard came and fetched them and brought them again into the guard chamber. And when he humbled himself, the wrath of Yahuwah turned from him, that he would not destroy him altogether. And also in Judah things went well. So things went very well once he humbled himself. Right? Verse 13. So King Rehoboam strengthened himself in Jerusalem and reigned. For Rehoboam was 41 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 17 years in Jerusalem, the city which Yahuwah had chosen out of all the tribes of Israel to put his name there. And his mother's name was Naamah, an Ammonitess. And he did evil because he prepared not his heart to seek Yahuwah. So he didn't necessarily prepare his heart to seek Yahuwah, but he acknowledged at one point that his heart, that the things he was doing was unrighteous. But he was still deemed as an unrighteous king. And then he passed away. All right. So that's it. We're going to wrap it up there, and we'll go into more dealing with the Split Kingdom series next week. All right. I want y'all to have a good Shabbat. Hope to see you all in here soon. We're going to be followed by praise and worship, which is followed by today's main lesson. All right. Y'all have a good one. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom.